This is AM Agenda. With me now, Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg and Labor MP Ed Husic. Gentlemen, it's good to see you both.
Good morning, Kieran.
You likewise.
Welcome.
I mean it when I say it. It's good to see you too.
No, we all mean it. Very authentic this morning. Josh.
Getting too close to Christmas.
Julie Bishop talked to Ralph Blewett apparently twice last week. According to Fairfax, she was on the phone with Ralph Blewett last Wednesday. Yesterday, she only said she met or spoke to Ralph Blewett once on Friday. A bit of a discrepancy there.
Not at all. Look, Julie Bishop has made it very clear she spoke to Ralph Blewett, and that was totally appropriate. She wanted to see if he had more documents.
She said once, it was twice.
Well, she said she had more documents to damn the Prime Minister's behaviour in this matter. Going back a number of years, but it's an important matter going to the heart of the Prime Minister's integrity and judgment.
But if you're doing that and you're having to back down like she did yesterday, accusing the Prime Minister of being complicit,
but this
and
is
then
just
back down.
Kieran, these are just distractions. The real issue is why didn't the Prime Minister say?
This whole issue is very critical.
No, it is.
Yeah.
No.
Remembering your ATM slip from 17 years ago is really important.
Look,
have you filed yours?
Kieran, why didn't the Prime Minister open a file in this case? Why did the Prime Minister set up a slush fund? There are her own words, which Bill Shorten has described as inappropriate and unauthorised. And why was the Prime Minister asked to leave a law firm, namely Slater and Gordon? These are important questions that she has dodged the answers in Parliament, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
And the money in the backyard, it's like a bad Agatha Christie book.
Or what's or Sean Maloney? Wasn't he the guy who wrote all those books about Victorian politics? So I can't remember. Someone will correct me on Twitter, I'm sure. But the thing is, Josh, you said a few moments ago this is a distraction. Like the minute the heat comes on the opposition, it's a distraction. But this whole affair, like as much as it's in sort of engaged the interest within Canberra, I don't think really people in the outside world, this has nothing to do with the sort of things that we're supposed to be dealing with in Parliament. And the fact of the matter is, you're talking about issues that stretch back over 20 years but can't remember in the course of the last week how many conversations you had with Blewett. How is that a credible
But don't you think there is important questions to answer here?
No, but as I said before, does this come down to whether or not the PM kept ATM receipts from 20 years ago, or are we going to get onto substantive issues?
It's a lot more serious than that.
And, it is serious then. If you're going to run what we've effectively got in question time now is sort of this pop gun offence that sounds great, it just sort of it comes and appears really well, but there's no substance to it. There's nothing of merit to it. So
$400,000 in a slush fund, which was done without the authorisation from the AWU, that's not an important issue?
No, the issue is...
In breach of WA law?
Let's respond to it.
The issue is, I don't think I can recall any Prime Minister having done the number of press conferences on an issue that went well before her time as Prime Minister and has been willing to be as open and transparent as she can and answer all the questions she can. And you guys have devoted 2 days of question time to this. Well, if you reckon it's a winning strategy, all power to you. But, you don't really see much coming out of question time because the PM has comprehensively answered these questions. Get onto issues of substance. We're talking about education reform, NDIS that you discussed with Jenny McNamara.
What about the fact that Julie Bishop's leading the charge on this?
Very effectively.
If you had a smoking gun, Tony Abbott would be doing it.
Not at all. This is
the
great irony of all this, Kieran. Julia Gillard gets up there and says, well, why isn't Tony Abbott asking the detailed questions of me? When he does ask detailed questions of her, he's accused of being a misogynist. Well, look, the Labor Party can't have it both ways. Julie Bishop has forensically examined the detail in this case. Every day there is more information coming to light. You've seen Ralph Blewett out there. You've seen Bruce Wilson out there. Now you've got police investigations, and I think it's important that the Prime Minister answers the questions in the Parliament, not just in a press conference, on the floor of the Parliament when she gives the detail that's been missing today.
Now, the PM, I think, is absolutely right in questioning why Julie Bishop's leading this attack, and I'll tell you why, because Tony Abbott said a few weeks ago he wasn't interested in the sleaze and smear. He said that wasn't part of the opposition's approach. So instead of him doing it, the reason why he's not doing it is because he'd basically be seen for what he is, that he can't stand by the words he expressed only a few weeks earlier, that he would be beyond this and that we would be able to get to issues of substance. And by the way, I thought every day that he was there, he was campaigning on the carbon tax. So why are we spending 2 days in question time on this?
I asked Jenny Macklin about this. One of your colleagues, Steve Gibbons, says on a tweet this morning, Libs are led by a gutless douchebag and a narcissistic bimbo who aren't fit to be MPs, let alone Prime Minister and Deputy, both should be sacked.
Steve, I love you. You're way out of line.
And
Like,
you're
I
on your
just
way
think-
out, Steve, anyway.
I just think that is, I wouldn't do it, and I wish he hadn't have.
Because, I mean, if you're talking about misogynistic language,
Well,
to say the Deputy Leader's a narcissistic bimbo is a bit
and look,
rich.
I don't, I have a whole host of, concerns or criticisms of people opposite, but I don't use that phrase. And look, Steve can explain why he did.
And you've heard from two Labor MPs, a Minister and Ed Husick this morning, both rejecting that. So obviously it was a one-off.
Oh, well, look, I also reject the comments of Steve Gibbons, but, the point is the Labor Party doesn't have clean hands here. They set up this false and misleading debate on misogyny, trying to accuse Tony Abbott of hating women. I mean, there's all this, the messaging going out by the Labor Party. Oh, on the one hand, Steve Gibbons doesn't represent us anymore when he makes this inoffensive comment. But on the other hand, we'll go into the Parliament and we will slam Tony
Abbott. What I
Abbott.
said a few moments ago. I'm not saying he doesn't represent the Labor Party. I'm saying what he said. As much as I love Steve, I don't agree with what he said. It was wrong.
And Tony Abbott's a misogynist?
I'm not
Tony
saying...
Abbott's a misogynist?
Well, no, but I think Tony's
exactly.
Okay, if this is the standard in which of proof that we're relying upon, so be it. But my point is that the way that Mr Abbott addresses the Prime Minister can be done differently, and he's said things in the past that I don't like, and a lot of other people don't like.
The vote on elevating the status of Palestine, the Prime Minister was unequivocally rolled on this week.
Look, no, I think as Foreign Minister Carr said, the Prime Minister's executed in terms of leadership very well in terms of reflecting the sentiment across, because there is a spectrum of views within the caucus on this matter, and she's basically tried to reflect those views.
Which wasn't her own view.
Well, we all have different views. I mean, my personal view is I would have voted in favour of the Palestinians getting this observer state status. I think it's important that Palestinians be brought into international fora where they recognise that the responsibility in terms of engaging in those fora requires them to deal with things differently, and that if everyone says we're about a two-state solution, but we do nothing to breathe life into that.
But if the Prime Minister went into the caucus and, well, first of all, she'd met with the Cabinet, majority of Cabinet didn't back her. She went into caucus and pushed ahead with it, got rolled. That would have been almost fatal for her leadership.
I think people will be making a lot of things out about what's occurred in the last 24, 48 hours, and I wasn't involved. I'm not in Cabinet, so I can't tell you what's gone on. And even if I was, people would be very...
But it doesn't undermine her authority?
I don't think so. I think it reflected the fact that she moved with the sentiment within caucus.
You've heard what Ed had to say about the need to elevate the role of and the status of Palestine. There is a lot of talk about a two-state solution, but not a lot of action in terms of Australia that will help make that eventuate.
Look, the Labor Party is trying to walk both sides of the street. On the one hand, they're saying, Kieran, we support a negotiated two-state solution. On the other hand, they're now not taking a principled vote in the UN against a unilateral decision by the Palestinians to go and seek observer status as a state. Now, we would have been in good company to vote against this motion in the UN. The Canadians, the Americans, a number of EU countries like Germany are against it. And I think the Prime Minister had said numerous times, we are going to be voting against it. The outcome of yesterday's caucus meeting is they're abstaining. Now, this was an issue of principle. You're either for something or you're against something. On our side, we've got a clear position. On their side, the Prime Minister's been ambushed. I mean, Gareth Evans was out there briefing backbenchers in the last few days. There was a private member's bill. She's been distracted, and suddenly, all her enemies in the caucus have come out to knife her on this one. And I think the fact that they're out there strongly leaking in the papers today that the Prime Minister was defeated on the floor of the caucus is pretty significant, Kieran. I think it's, she's going into Christmas with big questions over an integrity, over big questions over her judgment, and now big questions over her authority.
Well, as Josh says, and I think rightly, when you have people backgrounding against the Prime Minister openly after a vote like this, it's not a good look. And it's certainly, the the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Oh, well, look, and similar, like, in terms of distraction on the other side, like they've got their own issues. I think that's a distraction from the bigger point. And the thing is, and I'm just picking up on some of what Josh has been saying, Josh is talking about us rushing to basically join 7 other countries on the planet. 7 other countries on the planet that would vote no. Yes, it is. And why don't you made no reference to the fact that in the UK they're actively considering a yes vote as well on this matter. And the fact of the matter is, from my perspective, I actively support Israel's right to exist and defend itself, but we also need to have a Palestine and create a state for people who at the moment are stateless, and we are doing nothing other than uttering words and doing nothing to actually advance this matter.
But the difficulty...
You said earlier
here,
it was to elevate it to state...
to observe a state as a state.
A non-state member.
But no,
like the Vatican.
It's called a state. It's called a state observer.
No, I thought it was observer. Well, at any rate, we'll be arguing over words.
And so, look, the point here is that the Palestinians are very much divided themselves. You've got Hamas in the Gaza Strip, which in its constitution does not recognise the state of Israel. You've got Abbas in Fatah in the West Bank, which can't actually even travel to the Gaza Strip themselves. So to call them a united body, and then to try to give them this observer status within the UN, that's very problematic, and this will set back the peace process. That's the point. I mean, the Americans have already said that we are not going to provide the aid going forward if the Palestinians.
No, you're right. We shouldn't have been We shouldn't, on the basis of your logic, we shouldn't be on the Security Council because of the fact we've got a divided parliament.
On the basis of the Security Council, you should.
On the fact that we have a hung parliament, we shouldn't be on the Security Council.
If you're going to be on the Security Council, you should be providing guidance to other states and taking positions.
What about that point? We've only got a minute left, but we get on the Security Council. The first vote, we don't have a position. We abstain.
No, well, and at the same time too, I think we're trying to. I think we've got a proud record as a mid-level power of trying to involve ourselves and broker. Look at what we did in terms of Cambodia. And the other point I'd make too, Josh, is how is it that we can say no to advancing the case for a two-state solution, yet our nearest neighbours, Indonesia, we've seen East Timor move to independence quicker than Palestine.
It's a very different issue. And
is it really?
Yeah, completely different issue.
Yeah, go and ask the Indonesians.
All right. Ed Husick, Josh Frydenberg, good to see you both. Thanks a lot for that.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. That's all for AIM Agenda. The news is next.